Hey, everybody, this is John the Comic Guy, and today I have a very special guest. You've heard me mention him many times on my channel. The first is I want to say this man has been my best friend since kindergarten. We went to grammar school together, we went to high school together. Believe it or not, we even went to the same college together. So when we were children, his family basically adopted me. And we went on vacations together. His family took me on, there was a vacation at Mystic Island, New Jersey. So he took me on week vacations with his family. I can honestly say no other family, non-blood family, has impacted me more profoundly than this man's family did. His name is Ernie Daw, and ironically enough, we actually in college we both went to Montclair State College together, and we and a group of others used to cut class to play Dungeons and Dragons. So we used to sneak in the student center, sneak in one of the offices, which probably the faculty might have used, but we snuck in there and played Dungeons and Dragons. Ernie and I have been to countless concerts together that included Van Halen, Rush, Journey, Asia, Asia twice, in fact. So, really, without further ado, I want to welcome my best friend in my entire life and the person who got me hooked on comic books, Ernie. Ernie, welcome.
Hey, John, how you doing?
Good. And everybody, I should also say what we want to do is kind of celebrate this year, and I'm going to show you the first comic that I ever bought. But this is really celebrating 48 years of comic collecting for me. Thank you so much. Ironically enough, Ernie preceded me by many, many years, and we're going to show some of his collection that he still has. But Ernie has me beat by who knows? It might have been 5, 6, 7 years, right? So Ernie's beyond 50 years of collecting. Now, speaking of college, before we start with the interview, I want to also share one of the people that Ernie and I used to hang out with in college. His name was Bob Neapolitan, and he had multiple sclerosis. When we first met in Montclair State, he was a big comic collector as well, and that probably was one of the times I quit. But I want to give a shout out in the memory of Bob and his family. His family was wonderful. They lived in Ernie, was it Little Falls or Singac?
Little Falls.
Little Falls, and his sister Charlene, and I'm a Facebook friends with his brother Joe as well. But Charlene reached out to me when she knew I had a YouTube channel, and she sent me three comics that used to be in Bob's collection. So again, Bob passed away a while ago, and we have some great memories with him. But they sent me these books, and I'm gonna give one to Ernie when he's over here over the summer. But these are some books that, while they may not have a lot of commercial value, obviously being from our buddy, from what's left of his collection, they have some emotional value to us certainly. So let's uh, let's talk about the first two comics I ever had. I didn't buy, Ernie. I don't know if you remember them, but one of them was a Justice League of America number 111. Do you remember that book?
You're going to have to show it to me, John, because it's not ringing a bell.
All right. So this
Oh,
is
but the cover,
obviously,
the cover, the scales.
yeah, yeah. The reason I think these kind of books always made a big difference to me is I love team books. When you have a team on the cover, it just seems so dynamic. But that was Justice League number 111. Ironically, the original two books you gave me are both gone. But so this is one of them. I love this. The other one is still one of my favorite covers, Ernie. Avengers number 72. Is that?
72. Is that Scorpio on the
Yes,
cover,
sir.
right? I
Yes,
can't see.
sir.
Yep. Good.
So, and again, I got this. Matter of fact, I got this in one of the stores that we used to go. I got this from Time Warp decades ago. But so, Ernie, you really did get me hooked with these dynamic covers. I was
So I just gave them up, John.
Yes. You didn't even. We were kids, You didn't even think twice. You basically you gave it to me. So thank you for that. It might have been a couple of different times, but you might have given me one comic at a time. But so when Ernie and I were younger, I'm going to see if technology will allow me to do this because I actually have a picture of it. But when Ernie and I were younger, we used to play superheroes. Um, I ended up at the time, Iron Man was my favorite. Spider-Man was Ernie's favorite. So I used to play Iron Man's son. Ernie used to play Peter Parker's son. And in my old house in Cedar Grove, um, my father had a back deck with a railing around it. So again, I'm hoping technology allows that I can flash a picture of the deck. But we actually were on the second story and they had railings, black guard railings. And Ernie and I used to walk around on the outskirts of this. And you know, if we fell, we would have definitely busted a leg. If we hit our head, we would have be dead. But I think generally, right? Do you remember that, Ernie?
Yes, yes. And I remember, I don't know how you could have done it as an Iron Man. I was at least a Spider-Man, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and in real life, by the way, everybody, Ernie was far more athletic than me. I was always a clumsy guy. Ernie was always stronger, more
Oh,
athletic.
yeah.
But it's just kind of funny. We would do dangerous stuff and play around as little kids, and those are some amazing memories, you know.
Mhm. Right.
So
Very good.
also in grammar school, Ernie and I actually drew our own comics. At the time, we named it Gem Comics Group, and that stood for John, Ernie, and Mike. Mike was another one of our friends that was kind of into comics, but Ernie, Ernie had a character called Nuclear Man, and I drew a character called Electron. A big part of my problem is since I've quit comics many, many times, or three times, I tend to get rid of stuff. So a part of what I know about me is when I stop doing something, I purge. So all of the comics that I used to draw basically are gone because I purged them. But Ernie always ended up keeping his stuff. I probably made comments about it in like, Ernie, what are you doing with this stuff? And I think you always responded, oh, you never know. I might need this. But Ernie, could you show, if you have a picture handy of Nuclear Man, could you please show the audience what
Yeah, I'm a little embarrassed of saying that this is actually a comic that I made, but there it is, the powerful Nuclear Man cover, and the internal pages were all done. But of course, we did it one copy, actually colored by pencil. But John, I've got to say, you called us Gem, and I do remember that at the time. And it says up here our logo was Super Comics, and I made sure on one side it says Ernie John, and on the other side it says John Ernie, because we were always trying to make sure that we gave ourselves equal billing. But that is Super Comics.
oh, all right. So
So we went through different iterations, if I could say. All right.
I guess so. And everybody noticed that's 35 cents. So that we clearly
Yeah.
did this around the 35-cent cover price time.
Yeah, which is maybe embarrassing. Maybe we would rather have been at the 12-cent time.
Yeah, if we were smart, we would have done that. But, so if I remember correctly, we used to end out buying comics in three different locations that were sort of regular. Um, one was a luncheonette in the center of Cedar Grove, right on Pompton Ave. One was the 7-Eleven by your house on Pompton Ave, closer to like Singac. And then there was one on Main Street in Little Falls, which was the one walking distance to me. I probably went there. Um, when we bought comics at that point, you know, from 25 cents and on, that when I was involved, we really had no clue about the value of comics, right? I probably didn't even keep them in comic bags. You might have. Did you have your stuff in comic bags at that point?
I don't think we had any knowledge of even comic bags until post Dover,
Oh, okay.
right? Dover
Okay.
Heroes World or
Oh, that
Superhero.
Heroes World. Okay, so everybody, there was a place in Dover, New Jersey, Heroes World. I had no idea about the name, so thank you for that reminder. Um, when Ernie and I first went there, that was it was, I'm sure, Ernie's father driving us over to Heroes World in Dover, and that was a dusty, I think, a smaller place, but it had all back issues, and really, I think for both of us, that gave a realization that these comics have some kind of an inherent value that I really didn't understand at that point. I think at that point, I just assumed that the current market price, cover price was what the comics were worth. So if you had a 12-cent cover price book and we were buying things for 25 cents, you had a 13% increase. Uh, Tell me, Ernie, when we saw that Amazing Spider-Man #4, and I still remember that the cover with the Sandman.
The quadrants, right?
Yes, yes. It shocked me. It was way beyond what I could afford. $25, right? I was such a poor guy. I had no money. But Ernie, what were your thoughts on that?
Right. I think when we walked into that store, and now that I think about it, John, I think Heroes World was the name that it turned into, but wasn't it the superhero shop first?
It
I
might have
think it was superhero shop, then the whole thing turned into Heroes World. But when we walked into that, we were like kids on their birthday, right? We saw back issues for the first time, and we were scouring through those long boxes and seeing something like Spider-Man #4, which I don't think we ever thought we would see up front, because Spider-Man was up in the 150s or 160s by the time we probably went there, right?
yes,
So it was incredible. It was incredible.
exactly.
That was where I bought Spider-Man #30, and I never would have thought I would have had Spider-Man 30.
As a matter of fact, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a couple of copies I have, and Ernie, if you have them with you too, feel free to show them. But the first comic I ever bought, and I've showed this to the audience before, but the reason we're celebrating the 48 years is this was in April of 1976 issue. I think the books came out a couple of months prior, so it might have been February. I forget, but February. But it was an April cover date of 1976. That was the first book I ever bought. Not obviously this particular book, because John did not have that kind of forethought. But that was this book. And then, do you still have #30? Not my original copy, but this is a copy of Spider-Man 30 that we had. The first cat
That's
burglar.
it. Yep, that's it. Don't have it, but maybe that's my copy. Maybe you got to send it back to me.
Maybe I'll give it back this summer. So that was one of the ones you let go.
Probably, yeah.
All right. We're gonna talk about that too. Um, so then you kind of fast forward. Um, Ernie and I went to a couple of comic conventions together, several, and the big ones were out of New York. So when we went to New York, I think the first time we actually took the bus, and your mom accompanied us, right? So we were in New York, and this was before it was formerly called the New York Comic Con. But we went there together. Your mom was chaperoning, because I think we were, if it was 1976, we were 11 or 12. So we're walking around. I was totally dumbfounded about this. I never, again, just recently when we went to Dover, we saw back issues, but now we're in New York City seeing vendors, and it's not like the New York Comic Con now where they have toys, video games, swords, clothing. It was basically all comic books. And Ernie and I met with while we were walking around. We saw a line for Stan Lee. So Ernie, could you take a minute? I remember we both ended up buying Daredevil issue #4. They were beat up copies. Mine, I have a copy of that now, but again, because I was very short sighted, I ended up selling some comics. So this is not my original copy. But Ernie, can you show your original copy? There. Oh my God.
So we
Oh
each
my
got one
God.
there, but
And hold it sideways. So look at that, everybody.
yeah.
Stanley's signature.
So you're gonna have to look right there. You can see Stan the Man. It says Stanley right near her hair. I think John, yours probably looked exactly like this. It was
Yeah.
right in that spot. And if I may, I'll show the photos that were taken. Literally, there's Stan the Man. That's my back right here. Stan signing that very issue, and there's John in his red jacket.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The same, the images could almost be identical, except for you and me standing in there. But he was signing Daredevil #4.
Oh, that's amazing. So yeah, so everybody who into like certificates of authenticity, you don't get more real than that. So that leads me to another point. So around that time, Ernie, you had a display case that I think your dad ended up getting from work. It's kind of very similar to a display case that a store would have and display their comics or toys or whatever. When you had that display case, as always, I had comic envy, right? I'm seeing you lay out some of your more valuable comic books. When do you think you started knowing? But was it from Dover? Our experience at Dover, that book, the comic books had a value more than just cover price. What triggered you with the knowledge of displaying? Because it always impressed me, but I just don't know where you acquired that knowledge of like a value of comics.
That's a good question, John. Yeah, and this was the book that we got at that Dover, which was the sixth edition of the Overstreet Price Guide, where again, this was at the time, I guess, what was the staple, right? No longer, but this was what gave value or marked value to comics. But that all being said, I think whenever you have a display case given to you, you think, well, what do you put in it, right? What looks good? What I don't know if it was necessarily the value of the comic as much as, like you said, certain covers looked great, whether it was Scorpio on the cover or something, but it was something to be proud of. And I think that was what it was, right? Once we knew the existence of the concept of plastic bags to put over comics and to take care of them, I guess that was the collector bug in us,
Yeah, right.
saying this is something we take pride in and we want to display and show. And I had the means to do it because of that display case. But yeah, it was nice.
It was great. I remember one book, and I don't think it has a lot of particular value, but to this day, I still appreciate it. It's Howard the Duck issue number 2 with like the flying turnip. That was one of the books you displayed. And again, I didn't have at the time Howard the Duck number 1 either, but that number 2 issue with the flying turnip or the super turnip, something like that. It looks,
Wow. And I displayed it. You see,
it
I
did.
don't remember that being in the display, but interesting that you remember that. That was a great book though, right? The
It
Steve
was.
Gerber
It
books.
made me very jealous. And again, it may have, and I have a copy now, but it may, at the time, it didn't have, I think, a lot of monetary value, but the cover was very appealing.
Yeah, there you go. So and hence the need to display it, right?
Exactly. So, another book we ended up getting. So, New York had a lot of, obviously, the biggest of the conventions, but there were a lot of local ones that I think Ernie and I were very lucky. One of them was at a Holiday Inn in, was it Totowa, Little Falls? What do they consider that Holiday Inn right on 23?
Yeah, it was in Wayne, I believe. I
Right.
believe it was in Wayne, but you're right. It was like either a monthly or a bi-monthly. It probably circulated amongst other hotels, but every couple months it would come to that one near us.
And it was great because we could ride our bikes there, right? At that
Yeah.
point, we were too young to ride a bike. At that, so Ernie and I were kind of discussing this, and he and I kind of remember this differently. So, uh, at least I know I got my copy of Iron Man number 1 over there, and it was one of the Holiday Inn conventions, and it was for $5. Um, Ernie remembers his copy differently because he thinks he got it from his mom Christmas, which I don't remember. And he might have just pointed out to me, John, there's a copy of Iron Man number 1. But uh, again, this is, look at, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one. And there you go. Right. I think I got it for Christmas, and I think one of the dealers back in the day was Robert Bell. And he was and back in the day, probably John, you and I, we were always getting the flyers in the mail. Everything was done snail mail. You
Yes.
would you would put a self-addressed stamped envelope, send it to the dealer. They would send you back their list of books. Some were better than others.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I wanted a really nice Christmas gift, there it was, $6 for this bad boy. but
Ernie,
$5 is great too at the Wayne convention.
but yours actually looks quite good. What would you estimate your condition?
Yeah, you are a much better assessor than me. I mean, it's not bent. It looks pretty good. I haven't opened it up. I could open it up, but I'm going to say what, very very good, maybe very good plus.
All right, so that's probably like a 5.5. That it looks good, and I love the fact that Ernie, now you're keeping it in Mylar. That's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so now kind of fast forward. Ultimately, you stopped really actively collecting comics? I mean, and what I mean by actively is you don't have a pull list anymore. You probably always had kind of interest in, if you went to a comic store, you knew the owner, and you might have picked some stuff up, but you were not an active pull list collector anymore. And you also told me you sold your collection off to a guy in Pennsylvania. With all that, you actually kept a few of your books. So can you just describe, because I was very, very much different. I typically liquidated. You had the forethought, and again, it's amazing to me that you always had this kind of forethought. You kept a lot of your, some of your collection, and you made sure you fairly gave up and sold the rest. But what determined what you were keeping? And can you show us a couple of the highlights of what you still have that I'm sure I was in the same room present with them?
Yeah, John, and you know this from having so many. Comic books take up space, right? You start getting thousands of books. You don't have the room for it anymore. You're a young man, and things are going on. You're looking for a house. You've got to get rid of. You've got to make room. So the thing that was going through my mind was, what am I going to be doing with these? I still loved comics, but I was gradually going from being just a collector to just being a reader. I just wanted to read. I loved sequential art and comics. Bottom line is, put an ad in the Comic Buyer's Guide back in the early 90s. First person who responded was willing to come out to my house, knew my basic price. And once they were saying, wow, they're going to come and make the deal, that was where, again, I had the forethought to at least say, I didn't tell them all the specifics. I didn't say I had Iron Man 1 or Daredevil 4 or any of those books. I basically, selected a handful, put them aside. When he came, we made the deal. I helped him cart the books out, and that was it. It was what I wanted at the time. I mean, I guess I still don't have regrets because it was what I wanted at the time, but that's what went through my head. But you're right. I'm glad that I had the forethought to pull some books that I hadn't committed, but I had to give them Miller Daredevils. I had to give them, Cochran and Byrne X-Men. I had to give them a lot of the stuff just to make it enticing. Because again, there is probably a lot of dreck in there, things that aren't worth a lot of money. So that's how it kind of unfolded.
Do you have any more choice pieces? You showed us the Daredevil #4 signed and Iron Man #1. And by the way, as Ernie did sell off his collection, I assure you, he made a significant amount more than I did, because if you guys remember, I think I showed this in episode 11 or earlier. I sold my Iron Man #1 and my signed Stan Lee Daredevil #4 for about 20 bucks at the Livingston Mall. Ernie, and you said you don't remember me doing that, do you?
Well, no, but that Livingston store, I think, was the Dover store moving, right? I think, just to give it context,
Oh, that was
that
doing
was
the same?
I think it was. That was like the
Oh, I didn't know
superhero
that.
shop, goes from Dover, it moves to Livingston. Eventually, it becomes Heroes World. But yes, and again, I don't recall that, but I'm not surprised that that's where you would sell it, right? Because they had all the books in the back, right? All the valuable books. Do you remember, John, going back there ever and seeing your book on the wall?
Yes. Oh, no, no. But you pointed this out as we rode our bikes. So again, this is at the time frame that we rode our bikes to Livingston. And everybody, if you guys know Jersey geography,
Cedar Grove's far away.
right? Cedar Grove, we rode our bikes to Livingston. But as we were leaving, you pointed out, and at that time, I had no regrets, right? I was buying Kiss records, or I was buying records. But you go, John, he was putting your Iron Man #1 on his wall as we were leaving. So the guy saw value. He probably saw this little kid, not, stupid kid selling it for 10 bucks. And that became his wall book the minute I walked out of there.
It'd be curious to know what he priced it at and how fast it sold. Maybe it didn't sell fast. Maybe it'd be interesting to know. But you don't know. You don't know.
And I don't have regret. Again, I was into music, but ironically enough, all the records that I acquired from selling these books, I probably could get 2 or 3 records, right? I think they were $4.99, so I got, and then I sold them at a garage sale for like 100 records for 20 bucks. Again, I'm dumb that way. But all right, let's see a couple what you would think would be a choice book that you ended up keeping.
Well, I have the first appearance of Nick Fury, right? Strange Tales 135, I believe that is. Yeah, 135.
Nice.
We've got number one of not number one, 129, first appearance of Punisher. You can see
Bravo.
that, right? You like that?
Bravo.
We've got Marvel Spotlight 5, first appearance of Ghost Rider.
Nice.
I don't know,
Nice.
why the camera's the oldest Spider-Man I've got is 25. So that was always a fun cover, right? With
I
J.
love
Jonah
that.
Jameson,
Yes.
the fun cover.
That was one of the books that always had you. Now I have a graded copy of that, but that was one of the ones you displayed in that display case. That you at least you certainly kept choice comics, no doubt about it.
We got to tell the story though around all these Thors that I've got signed.
Yes,
I've got a whole bunch of Simonson Thors, right, John?
yes, yes. A great point. So Ernie and I did during my second period. So we were in college now. During the second stint of collecting I had, Ernie at this point had never quit. Right, he was moving forward and acquiring great books. But there was a period of time that the first time I quit collecting comics, it was because of records. The second time I kind of quit collecting comics was ultimately probably because of girls. But there's during that second time, Ernie and I were in college and we went to New York and to a Comic Con at that point. And then we didn't, and maybe you describe it with me. We were probably just meandering around. We bought at that point the Beta Ray Bill storyline sort of was out for maybe 3 or 4 months, right? It was big. We knew it was big. But I didn't have any of those issues, right? I was kind of getting back into collecting, and you were like, John, this story, the dude took Thor's, hammer. So we go and buy them. And then while after we have a stack of these Thors in our hand, and I wouldn't be surprised if we had multiple copies. I don't have multiples anymore, but we're walking around in the hallways of this hotel, and I think it was the Omni Hotel, if I remember correctly. But Ernie, tell the audience what to describe when we were walking around and then we see Walt Simonson.
Yeah, he was walking there, a young Walt Simonson at the time, probably with his portfolio, and we're going one way, he's going the other way. I think we're above the dealer's floor, and we stopped him and said, "Hey, Walt, and would you sign?" And we had all the copies there of our books, and he was gracious enough to literally just on the carpeted floor of the hotel stop. It's just the three of us there, and sign as many of these books as we had. And I think it was you, right, that he asked you, where do you want them signed? And what did you say?
I said the inside of the book, the first page. And Ernie, I'm just being totally honest. I have regrets about that now. I don't have any of them graded, and they're all in. I put them all in my comic skin, but so we could still enjoy the signatures. But the way people are doing it now, they're using these cool metallic pens, and they're signing the cover. I almost wish he did that, but
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we can see what a
oh,
lovely
perfect.
signature he had, right?
I love that as a diner.
Right below Doom.
Yeah, that's a
That's a great signature of his, and it
yeah.
matches what's on the cover. You can see, and that's not the real one. That's on the comic. It's in the comic itself, right?
Yeah, and I think I have 4 or 5 signed books from him, all from that run. It may not all be sequential, but it's close. How many do you have that are signed?
I'm thinking four. But I, like you said, I know we were buying multiples at that time. Maybe I got rid of the other ones,
Yeah.
but it looks like I've got four right here.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we basically accosted Walt Simonson, got him to sign for it, and so those, despite the fact that I had quit one more time after that, I still have those copies. So Ernie, I'm so glad you do too. That was one of the ones that I had a little forethought. It was I think I kind of learned my lesson. There's a certain handful of books I didn't get rid of. Another one of them, by the way, and I don't have it out to show, but Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man number 252. Is that one of the books you kept? That was the first black costume, or one of the two around that time.
John, I just saw it here, I
Got it.
believe. I
Nice.
believe I believe I got it right here.
Yeah, that's that. There it is.
No, no, I don't. I've got
Oh,
300 here.
all right, ladies and
Sorry,
gentlemen, look at that.
that's different.
By the way, that's a better one. Okay, all right, so that's far better. And ladies and gentlemen, notice that's a newsprint, or that's a newsstand copy too. Ernie, that's a beautiful copy. Did you buy that right off the stands?
I think I did. Yeah, I have no reason to think I bought it else in another way, but
So in our old vernacular, would you say that's a near mint copy?
I think so.
All
I
right,
do.
so
I do
people, he's
think so.
holding up about a $3,000. What is that? Like a $2,000, $3,000 book at a 9.8. That's
You're saying how much is this worth?
I think for some reason I didn't do research because that kind of surprised me, but I think a 9.8 of Spider-Man 300. 9.8 is a very high near mint, right? The whole vernacular 9.2s up to like a 10.0 is near mint to mint. But if you got that in Mylar and it's still like there's no spine ticks, if that's a 9.8, that might be a $2,000 to $3,000 book. Anybody in the audience, sound off, let me correct me, and I could easily find this out after the show, but and I'll put it in writing. But I think that's you have a couple of $1,000 right there, especially with that condition, and especially because it's a newsstand copy.
I'll have to go back and look for the one though. I know the one you're referring to, right? It mimics Amazing
Fantasy 15.
Fantasy 15.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just want to take a moment here to thank our sponsor, Comic Skin, for giving us 5% off any of their self-slab devices, which is the singles, the 5-packs, or the 10-packs. To claim the 5% off, just make sure at checkout, where you can type in a coupon code, you put John the Comic Guy 5, and you get your 5% off. These devices, for me, work fantastic. They're my favorite out of all the self-slab devices because after you put your comic in and they're protected, they are more of a typical size of a slab. So for my OCD, they're not a little shorter, they're not a little thinner. They just fit perfect in with my other slabs. The other devices I've noticed, they're a little shorter, they're a little thinner, and you can't have a customized label, or if you can, it doesn't have a customized label that just meets my needs. So for me, I'm able to customize my favorite books in my own collection and be able to read them again and then put it back in the self-slab device whenever I want. So again, for me, it's just perfect. So again, claim your 5%, get some self-slabs, and if you do, if you make your own labels, share them with me. I really want to see how your books come out. You've seen some of mine. I'm going to continue to share how mine look, but I want to see what yours looks like. So thank you so much to Comic Skin for the 5% off. John, the Comic Guy 5. I really hope you enjoyed my interview with Ernie as much as I enjoyed giving it. I'm going to conclude this episode at this point. It was a great stopping point. On episode 17, I'm going to conclude my interview with Ernie. So we're going to talk about a couple more topics, and I really hope you stay with us. So if you enjoy this kind of content, if you find if you find it fascinating, please do hit the subscribe button. If you know people who you think might enjoy this content, please let them know about it. So I hope to see you on episode 17, where I'm going to conclude my interview with Ernie, and I will talk to you all soon. Thank you.